Well, everybody showed up for the season home opener for the Raiders, except for the Raiders. That plus a whole lot more on Monday's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast for September 23rd, 2024.
You are Locked On Raiders, your daily Las Vegas Raiders podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome here, Raider Nation, to another edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Thank you so much for making the show your first listen of the day. Make sure you subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast to get the latest edition of the show as soon as it becomes available. And as always, if you're checking us out on YouTube, you know we appreciate that. The show continues to grow each and every day, and that's because of your support, Raider Nation, and because of the job that my man Ari does. Ari does a fantastic job behind the scenes. We definitely appreciate him making sure we're on YouTube each and every day looking good and sounding good. So we shout him out. He's on Twitter at Ari Produces. You can hit me up on Twitter as well, at your boy Q254, and the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line is 707-654-4693 if you want to be a part of the show. And as you can imagine, based off of Sunday's game, a lot of Raider Nation chimed in on the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line. So we got your calls and texts coming up in segment number 3. I was going to do just locker room sound, but I thought that, you know what? It's really good to let Raider Nation go ahead and get their vent on. Based off of what the Raiders did on Sunday and the performance that they did not put in on Sunday, I thought it was only right that Raider Nation gets an opportunity to sound off. So segment number 3, your calls and texts. Segment number 2, just talk about, well, the theme that we talked about all week long, that the Raiders could not lose that game to the Carolina Panthers. They could not take a step back. They could not show that they were the same old Raiders. And unfortunately, they did just that. So we'll talk about that in segment number 2. Here in segment number 1, we'll talk about, well, the game and how it all ended up, coming to fruition. 36-22, the Panthers lose. We'll do that in segment number 1 after I tell you about the title sponsor of the show, which is FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And first of all, off top, I got to shout out to my guy, Leo. And if you're checking us out on YouTube, this is awesome. Kimani's game was on Sunday. That always is the game that I always dedicate to my son, whose birthday was on September 19th. So the following game, either if it falls on his birthday or after his birthday, is always his game. And going into the game on Sunday, the Raiders were 2-2. And now they're 2-3. So now they have a losing record at home. They have a losing record on Kimani's game that I always have here on the show and talk about here on the show. But I got to shout out to my guy, Leo. And if you're checking us out on YouTube, you'll see this shirt that I'm wearing. And let me stand up real quick. It actually says Kimani's game. And he presented it to me at the game. I was standing at the torch. I'll sit back down now. I was standing at the torch, talking with Raider Nation that showed up, and he brought it up to me. And I think I did everything in my power not to shed a tear. It was amazing. It really was. So thank you. That's awesome. I don't know how many people I showed the shirt off to. I tweeted it out at your boy Q254 as well. Just such a humbling gesture. And I thank him. And I thank him. It's wild, too. I tweeted out the picture of it, and, of course, a bunch of bots started saying, hey, you could buy the shirt here. Here, you could buy this shirt right here at this link. I was like, no, you can't. What are you doing? And so, yeah. So don't click on any links on Twitter. But a big shout-out to my man Leo. That's awesome. I do appreciate it, man. And I'll never, ever, ever forget it that you gave me this shirt. And so, like I said, it meant so much to me. So thanks so much. I do appreciate that. Unfortunately, the Raiders didn't get it done for Kimani, and the Raiders didn't get it for themselves. The Raiders didn't get it for Raider Nation. They lose 36-22 to the Carolina Panthers. Andy Dalton, of course, gets the start instead of Bryce Young. And I mentioned all week, like, it's not about Andy Dalton. It's not about the Carolina Panthers. Instead, it's about the Raiders. And they allowed Andy Dalton to just make them look like Swiss cheese. I mean, he carved them up. 26 for 37, 319 yards, and 3 touchdowns in the first half. Like, he threw those 3 touchdowns in the first half, and it looked really easy. There was only a couple times that he was pressured. One time he made an incredible throw, and you just have to cap and say, okay, Max Crosby had a bunch of pressure on him and looked like he was going to get to him, and he lofted one to the back of the end zone, and they just made a really good play. They also made a nice throw, and Adam Thielen made a nice catch, a nice diving catch as well. But for the most part, he wasn't pressured that much. He only got sacked twice, and anytime he didn't get pressure, they were just running wide open. Right, the middle of the field seemed like it was wide open all day long. Chuba Hubbard, 21 carries, 114 yards. So, again, a running back goes over 100 yards. And, I was able to excuse week 1 against the Chargers because it's okay. Well, there's about 4 plays that really broke their back when it came to the running game. And so it made the numbers look a certain type of way. All right, last week, Derrick Henry got going a little bit towards the end, but for the most part, they did a really good job. Now all of a sudden, it's a problem. It's a real problem, and clearly it's been a problem since preseason that they can't stop the run. But there was things that you could look at and say, all right, well, maybe it wasn't really as bad as we thought it was. No, it is now. There's no doubt about it that the run defense is a problem. And on Sunday, the defense in general was a problem. The defense is what the Raiders are supposed to be able to hang their hat on. The defense is what's supposed to lead this team, and they didn't show up. The offense didn't show up. The coaching staff didn't look like – I mean, it was a bad effort all around. And I'm not trying to, make it sound worse than it was. It was for a season home opener. I mean, really for any game, but a season home opener coming off a big win that you just had in Baltimore, to do that when your fans are packing Allegiant Stadium to the gills, it just was really, really bad. And Antonio Pierce was not happy after the game. I'm sure there's going to be some real tough conversations throughout the course of the week this week as they prepare for the Cleveland Browns, who, oh, by the way, are going to bring a ton of fans to Allegiant Stadium. I know people that work at ESPN Cleveland, Emmett Golden and Aaron Goldhammer, and their radio station alone is bringing a ton of people. They have a big party or a big event that they have planned, and they're basically holding down all of Planet Hollywood. And there's going to be a ton of Browns fans in Allegiant Stadium coming up next week. But you have all your fans in the stadium this week, and you put out that kind of performance. It was really, really bad. After the game, this is what Antonio Pierce had to say about the Raiders' effort.
Antonio, you said that you've wanted to be a team that controls the line of scrimmage, and on both sides of the line of scrimmage today, it didn't feel like that was.
No, we got our ass whooped.
Yeah. Any reason? What's the crux of that? Would you say?
We got our ass whooped. We got to put pads on. I don't know. I mean, got to get on the sled. It's the same group that's, for the most part, all come back and same technique, same coaches. It's not a different scheme. So obviously we're gonna have to coach it better and be some hard asses on the guys, and guys got to take some rough coaching, because that just didn't see that coming on either side of the ball. We thought we had opportunity to run the ball, and we didn't. We didn't do that at all. I mean, we tried, and just all the Buddhas too, But offensively, defensively, we didn't do a good enough job up front. Not good enough.
Coach, I know you're upset with the performance. How would you rate your concern about the team's effort? It seemed like this is one of the first games under your leadership that the team just didn't seem to show up tonight.
No, they didn't. I think as the game went on, I don't think it was a team. I think there was definitely some individuals that made business decisions, and we'll make business decisions going forward as well.
So it was obviously caught a lot of folks' attention when AP said that there was some guys making business decisions. And I had a lot of people texting at me, tweeting at me, who's he talking about? And I'm not 100% sure. We're going to talk to AP again this morning around 11 o'clock. So we'll get another conversation with him and see if he elaborates a little bit more, or see if he makes any kind of statement about any kind of moves, like personnel-wise, that they're going to do. But, for the most part, it felt like that the Raiders thought that they were just going to show up at Allegiant and they were going to get a W. Like, that's all they had to do was just literally show up, clock in for work, and get a dub. Like, they weren't going to have to work for it. And I'm not too sure why they felt that way. I really don't, because they haven't done anything to earn the right to feel like they could just show up and get a dub. Like that other team's not going to compete against them and give them an L, and that's exactly what happened. And at some point in the game, I think that they looked up and said, oh, blank, we're in trouble. We're in trouble. This is a sinking ship, and now we're not able to get off in time. Right, they're not able to get all the water off of off the ship, and so it's sinking. And then that results in the 36-22 loss. And now the Raiders are 1-2 on the season, and everything, all that good momentum that they built up last week, they just basically went right out the door. But we'll get into that and why that's a damn shame what they did on Sunday. We'll do that coming up in segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Before we get to that, though, I do want to tell you about one of the great sponsors here on the show, which is DoorDash. And, maybe at some point in that game, you decided that you didn't want to leave the house, not because the game was so exciting, but because, well, you just didn't want to leave the house. But you were hungry, so you decided DoorDash was the way to go. Well, DoorDash can go just about anywhere. So it is a really good way to go if you're, trying to get pizza and wings and some drinks for maybe a football party. Maybe you're excited by the action. Maybe you're going to do it tonight for Monday Night Football, whatever the case may be, but you don't want to leave the house, or maybe you're at the job and you don't want to leave the job and you need to get some food. DoorDash is definitely the way to go. And you should have the DoorDash app on your phone already, but if you don't, go ahead and download it right now. Matter of fact, when you download it, you could use promo code LOCKEDFALL24 for 50% off up to a $10 value when you spend $15 on your first order. Limited time offer. Terms apply. Promo is not valid for orders containing alcohol. And if you're going to get alcohol, that's only in certain markets that it does apply. So you have to make sure you check that out. Plus, you have to be 21 to order alcohol. Drink responsibly. Alcohol available only in select markets. Again, DoorDash, LOCKEDFALL24. All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Want to continue to dive into this 36-22 loss, and really I don't even think the score was that close with the Panthers getting the victory over the Raiders in the season home opener. And, I started to talk about it in segment number 1. Didn't want to go too deep into the weeds because I knew that, I had to wrap up the segment. But, it just really is disappointing to see the Raiders go out there with that kind of effort or lack of effort. And like you heard AP talk about business decisions, I did not think, and I guess shame on me, right? All of my years of being a Raider fan and even covering the Raiders like I do, I should know better at this stage of the game. But you would think, and I thought for sure, under Antonio Pierce, the Raiders would not have a performance like this. The Raiders would not come in and look unprepared. They would not come in and give a lackluster effort. That was the one thing that I was very confident saying, okay, under the Raiders or under AP, the Raiders will not look like that. And unfortunately, it happened, and it reared its ugly head again. And, when everyone says, well, same old Raiders, they win a game against an opponent that, most people say that they shouldn't have, or, everyone picks against them, then all of a sudden they go and lay an egg against an opponent that they should win. I mean, Carolina is a bad team, and they made them look like a playoff team. They really did. They made them look like they could do just about anything. Defense was dominant. The offense was dominant. And look, I guess I shouldn't call them a bad team, but they're just not as good as they looked on Sunday. Let's put it like that. I mean, they were obviously a team that was struggling with Bryce Young as the quarterback. Andy Dalton, the veteran quarterback, goes in there. And, I mean, for the most part, he just about was untouched. Really, throughout the course of the game. Obviously, Max Crosby is banged up. He's hurt. He has a high ankle sprain. When he walked off the field, I was standing there in the tunnel getting ready to go into the locker room, when they open up the locker room, and you can see the big brace that he has on his ankle. So, obviously, he's not 100%. He actually hurt that ankle on the second to last play of the game against Baltimore last week. So, that's very unfortunate, and you don't want him, to be unhealthy, but he's going to give you everything he's got each and every game. We know for a fact that Malcolm Kuntz is going to miss the whole season. We found that out late on Friday. That is a huge blow to a Raiders defensive line that all of a sudden is really riddled with injuries, right? It looked like it was the deepest part of the team at one point, and then Malcolm Kuntz goes down. Tyree gets banged up, even though Tyree returned, and he had some moments on Sunday where he looked pretty good, but just not good enough. Charles Snowden had moments where he looked pretty good, picked up a half a sack. Christian Wilkins got a half a sack. Robert Spillane got a sack. That's great, but it just wasn't enough. And you thought with Andy Dalton that they'd really be able to get a lot more pressure on him and make life miserable. And when they did that, he'd probably make some mistakes. But that wasn't the case. There were no mistakes. The only mistakes that happened were done by the Raiders. But all week long against the Baltimore Ravens, they were talking about no respect, and everyone's disrespecting them because they're not giving them a chance to go win that game. So after they win that game, they're, that's right, that now they put some respect on our name. But okay, you got to follow that up, and that's why I kept saying all week long. And shame on me, I guess, for believing that this is a different team and a different, this is with a different coach that he was going to have them ready to go and they were going to be focused and prove to us who they really were. You're supposed to go follow that up with a win and show that, okay, it wasn't just a fluke. It wasn't just a good day, in Baltimore, or the Ravens lost the game as opposed to the Raiders winning the game. Now it's easy for anyone to say, no, actually, the Ravens just lost that game. That's how the Raiders picked up that victory, because they let the Panthers embarrass them at home. Season home opener. Like that kind of stuff can't happen. So you take one step forward, but then you're taking 2 steps back. I talked to Nate Hobbs. Matter of fact, you'll hear that conversation come up in a quick minute. I talked to Nate Hobbs in the locker room, and then I was joined by a couple others after I got through, probably about the first minute or so. I probably asked him a couple questions, 2 or 3 questions, and then a couple other reporters walked over and started talking as well. But, I asked him just what happened, and he said they didn't have the same energy. And then I said, well, was he surprised? He's like, well, we had mad energy. It just wasn't the same as against Baltimore. So it's like what everyone said. So many people called in, texted in, and said, yeah, Q, I know you're right that this game should be won by the Raiders on Sunday against the Panthers, and it shouldn't be about the Panthers. It should all be about the Raiders. But you know what they've always done? They've always played up to an opponent, and then they played down. And I spent all week long saying that, they can't do that. They can't do that. I did the pregame show. They can't do that. Talked to everyone at the Torch there at Allegiant Stadium, said they cannot play down. They have to, play Raider football, show them exactly what it's all about. And what did they do? They went out there and played down. And it is so frustrating. And if I'm frustrated, I can only imagine Raider Nation that's spending their hard-earned money to come to the game or, get the Sunday tickets so they could watch the out-of-market games or just in general just cheering on the team, supporting the team that, continues to be, like Antonio Pierce said after the game, on a roller coaster. They go up and then they go down, go up and go down, and they can't do that. Who are they going to be consistent? That's all he's been ever asking for is consistent play from the team. And I know it's only 3 games, so I don't want to get too far and act like the sky is falling. But, you have a game against the Chargers where you lose in week 1. AP said it was a wake-up call. Then they go to Baltimore. They get a dub. Then they lose at the season home opener at home against the Panthers. And AP says guys made business decisions. Like already in week 3, right? I mean, so that to me, that just feels like there's some big disconnect. And that's a problem. And then, you see Aiden O'Connell get into the game late in the game. And throw a touchdown pass to Trey Tucker. And, it's kind of odd. And me and Paul Gutierrez from ESPN were talking about this in the Raiders locker room. The fact that, it's one thing when a game is out of hand and you throw in your backup. But when the 2 quarterbacks really battled it out throughout training camp to get that starting nod, and then you throw in the guy who lost the battle, you throw him in at the very end of the game. And I know AP said, the game was out of hand. We're just, let the other guy get some reps. It just felt different. So I don't know if that's a sign of something to come sooner rather than later, if there's going to be some changes made. But it was such a huge missed opportunity, right? The Raiders had an opportunity to go 2-1 through the first 3 games, have another home game against the Cleveland Browns, who, lost to the Giants on Sunday. And, I know it's every given Sunday and anything could happen in an NFL game. I totally get that, right? But it just feels like that they had an opportunity to really collect some good momentum and really build off of what they did in Baltimore and continue to gain confidence. And it just, all they did is like I said, took 1 step forward and then took 2 back. And it's not a way to, you can't operate like that. You really can't, and so then when people say it's the same old Raiders, then, and they don't like it. Okay, well, you got to go out there and earn it. You've got to go out there and prove, why teams should respect you or people should respect you or the national media that people are always talking about. Well, there's no respect for the Raiders. Well, they haven't earned it. They haven't earned it. If you go out there and you take that L like they took that L on Sunday against the Panthers, there's the reason why the national media is not respecting you or people on the outside that aren't close to the bubble aren't respecting you. Or the reason why Raider Nation may doubt you, right? I mean, the own fans are doubting the team because they've seen this story too many times. Right? I mean, I was talking to Paul before the game started, and he said that he had talked to the guy from ESPN that covers the Panthers, and he said, man, the Raiders are going to whoop the Panthers today, right? The Panthers just don't look like a very together team. And Paul said, yeah, well, I've seen this story before, and then we see how it played out, right? And so it's one of those where you can't really understand. There's no rhyme or reason why it continues to happen, except for the Raiders are doing what the Raiders do, and that is unfortunate for everybody involved. Most importantly, it's unfortunate for Raider Nation because, well, Raider Nation is the ones that get hyped up every single week and gets fired up. Hell, I was fired up, right? I was fired up going into the game thinking, man, they've got an opportunity to really prove something and show who they are, and instead they take that L and they get embarrassed. Well, I mentioned talking to Nate Hobbs in the Raiders locker room. Just a quick minute with Nate. Here it is from Sunday after the game.
In the Raiders locker room with Nate Hobbs, and Nate obviously is a tough one. What did you see out there? What seemed to be, I don't know, maybe Andy Dalton or just what they were doing offensively that gave you guys some struggles?
Attention to detail as a defensive unit. We didn't come out with that same energy. Came out with the Ravens first game. You know what I'm saying? Start fast like we usually do. So it's the NFL.
Were you surprised though that you guys didn't come out with that same energy?
I think we came out with energy, but not the same. I was surprised how they were moving the ball, for sure. But at the same time, I wasn't. It's the NFL. So I wasn't surprised, honestly. Andy Dalton, he's good.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? He's back up right now, but he's a good player, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
was a good guy in this league, so I wasn't surprised. Disappointed, yeah, surprised, no.
Antonio said that you guys had a really good practice week, and it just didn't translate on the field. You mentioned it's the NFL. Is that just how it goes sometimes?
It is how it goes sometimes. That's what can't happen.
Yeah.
But it could be the vice versa. You can have a bad practice week and play a good game. I've seen that too. So,
what is the message, I guess, coming out of this? What do you guys talk about in the locker room and try to turn it around after this week?
24-hour rule. You know what I'm saying? You can't sit and dwell, like I said earlier. You're going to lose some games. Nobody's winning 17 or whatever and no. You know what I'm saying? Not lost the game. And even who did do it, they didn't go to the Super Bowl. You know what I'm saying? They didn't. So it's at the end of the day, bro, it happens in sports. It's sports. It's going to happen.
So a quick minute right there with Nate Hobbs. And, I think the pauses in between my question and his answers probably told you all that you needed to know, right? And he's of course they have a 24-hour rule, so they're not going to dwell on it where they're, going to let them, let it ruin the rest of the season. I mean, it's only 3 games, and you've obviously got plenty of more games still left to go. You still got 14 more of these things guaranteed, but he realizes, just like other players realize, how big of an opportunity that they just missed. Right, they had an opportunity to get 2-1 on the season, and welcome in the Browns, and then you got the Denver Broncos the next week. Right, I mean, just there were some good things, and they can't look ahead, but I can. Right, I can look ahead. We can look ahead. We can go through the schedule and start to say, okay, this is a nice little stretch right here, because they're going to have stretches that are tougher stretches, and so you want to be able to collect wins when you can collect wins, and unfortunately, they took that L. The defense, again, I probably more disappointed in the defense because I expect the offense to struggle. But the defense, just the way to get gashed like that, there's no reason for that. And honestly, Raider Nation, or wherever you're at, if you're at the games, if you're watching at home, if you listen to it on the radio, Raider Nation deserves way better than what they got on Sunday as the Raiders lost 36-22. The one thing I can say about it is there's so much to talk about all week long. We got so many different layers of this game to talk about, and then obviously start to turn the page to the Cleveland Browns as well. But there's a lot to talk about because there's a lot of questions that still need to be answered about how in the world did the Raiders find a way to lose this game. But I'll let you say what's on your mind. Your calls and texts are coming up next. 707-654-4693 is coming up in segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Before we get to that, though, I do want to tell you about the title sponsor of the show, which is FanDuel. And all NFL fans, you can start the season, or at least the 4th game of the season. You can start right now, matter of fact, with a big return on FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can actually check out the latest stats, views, live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. So if you're around halftime of that Raider-Panther game and you start to get a hunch that, hey, this ain't going to go the Raiders' way, could have gone to FanDuel and placed some bets and made some money to maybe help alleviate some of the pain. You'll get started with $200 of bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Check it out again, FanDuel.com. It is America's #1 sportsbook. Here we go, Raider Nation, segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Your calls and texts draft that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. Let's start things off with a call from Central Valley Raider. He's calling to talk about the embarrassing loss of the Panthers and the continued pattern the Raiders have followed. Here he is, Central Valley Raider.
What's going on, Q? This is Central Valley Raider. Just touching in with you about today's game, if that's what you like to call it. I really don't know where to start. It's kind of, but I do, and because I knew this was going to happen. We tend to do this every year. We beat a team that is supposed to be up there, potential Super Bowl participants or deep in the playoff team. We beat them. We come together like a team and win. And then that next week, we end up playing somebody who we should totally destroy, hopefully get out, our starters at half, and we get some of the rookies and guys, second string, third string guys, some playing time, get them kind of ready. Well, last year, I believe it was Chicago this happened. This year, it is Carolina. A guy that was put in, a quarterback that was put in 5 days ago, he just lit us up. Graham had predicted that when reporters were asking questions during the week. he was adamant, like, I don't want to talk about him. We're moving on. I think he was really nervous. I think he was going to get exposed by a veteran quarterback. So I don't know. Is Graham suspect? But Gessie, he's terrible. We got to get him out of there. Obviously, the quarterback, it is what it is. But Gessie, he's just not doing it. I know we're not going to make a quick jump like that, barely in week 3. But the offense is terrible, man. Defense today didn't have no push. Crosby has a high ankle sprain, couldn't get in. You just seen how bad it was when we can't get no pressure. Telesco better get in the free agent, find out who he can get in, because we don't got Kuntz. We got Crosby hurt. He'll probably be out next week. So, yeah, that's all I got. Very frustrated. But, you know, the Raiders were Raiders today. Highly suspect. Central Valley Raider. I'm out.
Thanks for the call. Appreciate you, my man. And I don't think anything is wrong with Patrick Graham. They just had a really bad day at the office defensively. I don't know why they had that bad day at the offense. And obviously the defensive, trying to stop the run is a problem. That is an issue. I don't think anything's wrong with Patrick Graham. Crosby's banged up, like you mentioned. No real pass rush. Andy Dalton had all day to throw the ball. Kuntz is out for the season. I mean, just a bad day to have a bad day, and they've got to figure out how to fix it. And they got to figure out how to fix it quick, fast, and in a hurry. But thanks so much for that call. I do appreciate you. Up next, got a quick text from Tyson from Utah. It says, hey, Q, it's Tyson from Utah. Who do you think was making business decisions against the Panthers, according to AP? That's from Tyson in Utah. And your guess is as good as mine, right? I mean, I don't want to sit here and start trying to analyze in my head and say, well, this guy did this or this guy did that, when I don't really know yet. Like when Marcus Peters was making business decisions, it was so obvious. This, I'm not too sure exactly, what he was referring to and when he was referring to. Like at what point in the game did he start to see what he was calling, business decisions? Like, Thayer Munford left the game with the injury early. DJ Glaze came on. You saw JPJ in there at the right guard spot. I thought he was going to be the left guard. He was at the right guard spot for a while for Dylan Parham. You could see some missed tackles from Trayvon Merrick and Marcus Epps, but I don't want to say that those are business decisions. And then Marcus Epps got injured, and it looked pretty bad. Hopefully we'll get an update today from AP, but probably won't because it'll be too early. So probably won't find out anything about Marcus Epps till later on this week. But that didn't look good. I mean, it's I don't know. I mean, Devontae put a couple on the ground. I mean, you could say that a couple of his blocks weren't fantastic, but he's not really going to ever be out there to be that blocking guy. So it's hard to just say, okay, well, this is the guy he was talking about. And, of course, we'll ask him again today about it and see if he elaborates a little bit, but not 100% sure. Maybe if you see some roster moves, then we'll know, what happened. Maybe if somebody ends up starting over someone else, if someone gets benched, then maybe that's the reason why. But thanks so much for the text. I do appreciate you, and I would love to be inside the mind of AP to actually hear and understand who he was talking about when he said that. Up next, got a call from J.C. Rader from Ogden, Utah. He's calling to talk about the disappointment he has in the Raiders in general. Here he is, J.C. Rader from Ogden, Utah.
Q, this is J.C. Rader out of Ogden, Utah. My voice is a little worn out. Anyway, me and my wife just got out of the game. And, walked across the bridge. And I wanted to call you while I still had this fresh in my mind of what I was thinking about as I left the game. And, as I get older, I'm trying to be more even keel and not let these things upset you as much. And, it's a better way to live your life. But the thing is that I was thinking about it, and I'm not mad. I repeat, I'm not mad that the Raiders lost, and even the way they lost. I'm disappointed. That's the deal. Remember when you were growing up and the worst thing your parents could say to you is, I'm not mad at you, I'm just disappointed. That's how I feel about the Raiders organization. I know it's one game. I understand that. But that was just atrocious. It was like they never, I don't know if they went on a bender last night, the whole team, but the defense, everything all the way down looked bad. It all looked bad. No way to sugarcoat it. No way to put lipstick on the pig. It looked bad. Every aspect of the game. Yeah, so I have a question for you. This is my question for Raider Nation and the Raiders. Are we now on a sinking ship, or is this going to be a wake-up call? That's all I got. JC Raider out.
Thanks so much for the call, my man. And, yeah, it felt like this team, just thought they were going to show up and pick up the win. Like, as soon as they clocked in for work, they were going to, go into the locker room. They were going to change, put their uniforms on, and all of a sudden there was going to be a W appear in the column, right? Like, they didn't have to go out there and do anything. And it was wild that they acted like that because they haven't done anything to prove or feel like that they should be that team, right? It's funny. It's like a lot of people are calling it a trap game, and I said, but it can't really be a trap game because they don't, they won that game against Baltimore, and they got a tougher game going up against Cleveland, but they haven't earned the right to have a trap game, if that makes sense, right? They just don't. They haven't earned the right to have a trap game. It's like, they're playing at a high level. They go and pick up a real big win. They're feeling great. Then all of a sudden they have a lesser opponent because they have a bigger opponent coming up. Then, I can see a trap game then, but the Raiders haven't done anything. They literally have one win. And, it was a good win against Baltimore, but they haven't done enough consistently in a long time to have a trap game. So it's just, I don't know, man. It's just to have that feeling that they thought that they had arrived and that they were just going to show up and pick up a win. It just, man, I'm sitting in the press box. It was a sick feeling. Like, there's no way that they actually thought that was going to happen, but that's kind of what it sounded like. But a huge disappointment. I think the word disappointment is a great way to describe what happened on Sunday at Allegiant Stadium. Up next, got a text from Skate Raider. Q, once again, another offense that is boring and shows no fresh imagination. Very disappointing for a home opener. Trying to remain positive as we have a lot of football to go. Really thought we could take the momentum from last week into this week, but don't really see a green light on anything. Run game is bad. Passing game is bad. O-line is bad. D looked bad. Special team was mid. On to next week. Skate Raider. Great way to put it up or word it, right? I mean, I could have probably just worded it like that in segment number 1, right? Trying to recap the game. Well, the run game was bad. Passing game was bad. Offensive line was bad. Defense looked bad. Special teams was all right. Right? I mean, that was a great way to sum it up, and I think that's how you end up with the 36-22, score, final score, with the Carolina Panthers picking up their first victory of the season. So thanks for the text. I do appreciate you. Got a quick call here from Not For Nothing. It's just really a quick statement that he's got to say.
Not For Nothing. Called in a lot of times, and I know I don't really get much play, but I want to say this. The Raiders are pathetic.
Not For Nothing. Thanks so much. I appreciate you. And pathetic is a great way to word it. It was a pathetic effort out there for sure, right? AP would agree with that, as he said that guys were making business decisions and talked about getting whooped, right? I mean, just straight up. Like, Vinny couldn't even finish answering the question. Yeah, we got our ass whooped. Straight up. It's just the reality of it. That's how bad they played on Sunday. It just really, like I said, still blows my mind that it was that bad, and that was the effort for the season home opener against a team that that you have no business really losing to. But, maybe they're not really a very good team. Maybe at the end of the day, maybe that's just the reality. They're not a very good team, which would really stink because I had a lot of I still do have high expectations for them. I think they could win a bunch of games, but they've got to play obviously a lot better than they did on Sunday. That's for sure. Thanks so much for the quick statement. I do appreciate you. We'll close things out with a text from Franchise Raider. It says, Q, it's Franchise Raider from North County, San Diego. Straight embarrassing today. Play calling was horrible. D was horrible too. I hope we can step up against the Browns. Our playmakers need to make plays. If not, we're in the race for the playoffs. We're not in the race for the playoffs. Then we need to send Devontae to somewhere. Man, I had so much hope for us, and we ended up small, the same old bull, as always. I know season is not done, but these are games good teams win. AP is the answer, but needs play calling on offense to step up. Too many weapons for our offense to look like that. Let's step and smash the Browns. Raider Nation for life. That's from Franchise Raider. Thanks so much for the text. And, yeah, I mean, I don't know what they're going to do. The AP's not a play caller. Getsy is. I don't know if maybe he needs to move up to the booth. Maybe he'll get a better vantage point at that point. I don't know, but the play calling was very suspect. They continued to try to pound the rock, and it wasn't working. There was a third down play. It was like 3rd and 4 where they decided to run the ball. They didn't pick it up. Then they tried to go for it on 4th and 2. They didn't get it there. It just didn't look like there was any rhyme or reason. But at some point, the run game is just bad. It's so bad that you just can't do it. And I know I keep saying that you've got to find a way to run the ball, but it's just not happening. It really isn't. Like I said, we have so many layers to talk about this game and what the Raiders need to do better throughout the course of the week. Like this, there's nothing short to talk about. That's for sure. The conversation is plenty. We've got plenty of conversation to go around based off of everything that we saw and where this team sits right now. And obviously they don't sit in a very good place. Again, it's only 3 games, so they easily could come back and win on Sunday against the Browns, and we could be talking about a much better team. And maybe they could build some momentum now going to Denver. But just to my feeling, just a huge missed opportunity losing to a Carolina Panther team that is easily one of the worst teams in the National Football League. But here we are. There's a reason why they play the game. So thanks so much for that text. I do appreciate you coming up tomorrow. We will hear from Antonio Pierce, so if he has anything good to say, we'll have that on the pod. We'll obviously have news and notes as well. We'll continue to break down what is wrong with this team, especially on the offensive side of things, what they can do to get things going, and then your calls and texts as well. We'll do that all coming up on tomorrow's show. Again, shout out to my man Leo for the amazing shirt that he made. Kimani's game, unfortunately, it didn't go the way it was supposed to go, but thank you to all the Raider Nation that saw me at Allegiant and said, hey, we're going to get this one for Kimani. I couldn't even count how many people said that to me, and I really do appreciate that. That means a whole lot to me, so thank you so much for that. And unfortunately, like I said, it didn't go the way it was supposed to go. But we'll be back tomorrow talking about these same old Raiders, right? Same old, because that's who they proved to be on Sunday. Until then, Raider Nation, take care of yourself, take care of your family, love on your family. Most importantly, as always, just win, baby.